Every single day, I have guys come up to me face to face, email me, write me on social media, and come up with all sorts of ways to ask me this one thing. And that one thing is extremely critical to my success. And it's something that I didn't quite realize at first was so impactful or necessary or imperative. And that's having high self-esteem, a strong level of confidence. Self-esteem is really a deep level of confidence. What guys will ask me regularly is, Luke, how do you have such strong self-confidence? And the question is a very simple question, but the answer can be very complex. The answer that I first started giving guys, and the first kind of came to me, isn't as correct as what I've formulated now. What you have to understand is confidence and self-esteem is extremely deep-rooted. We can't just trick ourselves. We can't accidentally have strong confidence or self-esteem. In fact, it's so categorized that the way that you develop confidence is you develop confidence in specific skill sets and areas of your life. Take your ability to tie your shoes, for example. My ability to tie my shoes is so confident. I have such high self-esteem in that regard that I don't really think about it in a case-by-case basis. Every time I tie my shoes each morning, I don't really think about how I feel about tying my shoes. I'm so competent in that area that I can just tie my shoes really without looking at my feet. Driving is another example. Are you more confident behind the wheel now than you were at 15 or 16 years old? Of course, and that's because competence breeds confidence. The more competent you are in something, the more confident you'll end up being. Confidence ends up getting exuded into self-esteem. The more self-esteem that you have and the more rock solid that self-esteem is, the less negative issues are going to creep into your life and the more positive of a life you're going to live. Self-confidence, self-esteem stretches far beyond pickup. It stretches far beyond your ability to see that girl that you like and approach that girl and seduce and win her over and date that girl. Self-esteem and self-confidence is really a lifelong journey and goal for you being extremely satisfied with yourself from the core, from the inside out. I'm going to go through a bunch of different ways for you to increase your self-confidence and to really identify what your level of confidence currently is and how to measure it. The theme that you're going to notice throughout the Social Circle Blueprint is this: if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. I'm going to show you the nitty-gritty details of pickup, the nitty-gritty details of confidence building, the brass tacks, feet on the ground examples and anecdotes of how you actually get success with women, of how you actually increase your confidence, you actually increase your self-esteem, rather than having fleeting self-esteem in the moment that comes and goes. Most guys tackle self-esteem, confidence building in completely the wrong way. They tackle it in a case-by-case, subject-by-subject basis. This is the wrong way because you want to make sure that when you increase your self-esteem, that every morning when you wake up, you're actually improving your overall self-esteem, your core level of self-esteem. That you know that you're on the road, that you're on the track to being that guy. You might not be there yet. Each day that passes, it might not seem as fast as it could be or as fast as you want it to be. But each day that passes, if you follow everything that I'd lay out for you in the Social Circle Blueprint, and specifically in the self-esteem building and confidence building section, you're going to realize that every day you're increasing your core level of self-esteem. And amazing things happen after you increase that core level of self-esteem. You'll realize that you're able to achieve much greater things than you were able to achieve before. You're going to start realizing once you have higher self-esteem that your status naturally increases, that you'll naturally start building more social proof. Pre-selection will be a lot easier, and you're just going to draw much higher quality people into your life. Because what ends up happening is this: when you have a low self-esteem, you just attract low self-esteem people. But when you take all the concepts that we're going to discuss and how to raise your core level of self-esteem, then it's a much more natural process. You don't actually have to try to build that self-esteem when you go out. Quite regularly, guys will ask me, hey Luke, how do I get into state? And that question is a really interesting question, because just the nature of asking, how do I get into state, immediately takes you off the track of being somebody who's in good state all the time. Don't get me wrong, I'm definitely somebody who wakes up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning. I definitely have my good days and bad days. That being said, I will never let my internal feelings, I will never let my physiology affect my results. However, when you increase your physiology, when you increase your core level of self-esteem, your results will always be higher. But you have the choice. The choice is 100% within you to let a negative self-esteem, negative confidence situation affect your results in a positive or negative way. What I'm after, every time I put any amount of money, time, any other bit of investment into something, I'm after a specific and direct result. I'm not after wishy-washy, potential gray area kind of feelings. When you focus on questions like, how do I get into state? How do I improve my mood? What you start realizing is this: it doesn't actually yield you a better result that day. It's just kind of like a drug. It's kind of like when you buy a treadmill. Studies show that when you buy a treadmill, you actually get the exact same feelings as if you were to get into shape. Studies show that every time you buy an exercise magazine, you're actually going through the exact same mental emotions and physiological changes of if you were to go run. There's no real way to increase your state in a case-by-case basis. Instead, what you want to do is you want to focus on this. The main core part of building your self-esteem, building your confidence is this: whatever it is that you feel like you should be doing, that's the thing that you should do in that exact moment. A lot of guys feel like they could take this kind of too far, but this has been the number one factor in increasing my self-esteem and confidence, and really my overall satisfaction with my life. At every point in the day, I do exactly what it is that Luke wants to do. Now, that definitely comes to bite me sometimes, but I learn from it and move forward. But I always am able to look at myself, think inward, and realize I'm doing exactly what it is that I want to be doing. Now, when you stop and think about that for a second, when you make that choice over and over and over again, to always decide that you're going to take the action that is what you want to do for yourself, despite the consequences, despite any sort of negativity from people around you, over time, not a lot of time, over a small period of time, that ends up actually increasing your self-esteem dramatically, because it shows that you're taking control of not only your daily life, but you're taking control over how you're going to feel about certain situations, but any situation that comes up. Most people want to look for a quick fix to increase their state. What's the random self-amusement thing that they can do? What's the joke that they can tell? What's the thing that they can do to increase their state? The quicker that they increase their state, the quicker it will decrease. Whereas when you increase your baseline level of self-confidence and self-esteem by doing everything that it is that you actually want to be doing at all times, and the other techniques that we're going to go through in the self-esteem module, you're going to realize that each day you can measure a increase in your overall self-esteem, rather than it being a vague, verbose type of concept. When people talk about self-esteem, originally when I first heard about self-esteem, it was when I was a child, and I think I overheard different parents, either parents of my friends or my own parents, talking about different kids' self-esteem. In that moment, I realized that self-esteem was this thing that people like to bestow upon other people. You like to look at your friends and say, oh, that person's more confident than I am, or less confident than I am. Or Jack's more confident than Tim, or vice versa. The reason we like to do that is our ego gets in the way, and it causes us to have to make these assertions. It causes us to have to make these decisions. Whereas instead, if we realize that we're all on this forward momentum progression to just increase our overall self-esteem, you're going to have a lot more success. When you decide that self-esteem should be what you're after, not state. Self-esteem implies and creates this concrete, deep-rooted level of confidence. When you take the social circle blueprint tactics, when you take all the different techniques and formulas and anecdotes and examples that I show you for different items in the social circle blueprint, you'll notice that every single one of them increases your self-esteem, increases your confidence. Whereas if you just try to increase your state, or you just tell yourself that certain outside factors don't matter, or it's not about actually changing that physiology, what you're going to notice is this: when you do take all of those techniques and put them into practice, when you do take all of the different concepts that we talk about in the 9 and 10 game section, about how to get 9s and 10s, about the different fear of missing out experience sections, what you're going to notice is all different tangible and actionable techniques that you employ, that you create into a habit for yourself, that you make intuitive. You create an intuition about these correct habits. What you're going to notice is that your self-esteem not only rises, but it's fairly measurable. You're going to notice that each day, each week, you actually have more self-esteem that's not fleeting. Even if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed that morning and you're just pissed off, you're going to notice that you do have this sense of self-esteem that really is a very competent-based self-esteem. A competent-based self-esteem is where you just know what to do, even if you're not feeling particularly up to it that day. An example would be, you know that you want to go meet some girl this weekend. Friday rolls around. All of a sudden, you realize you're in a really bad mood for whatever reason. It's a boss situation, a family member, maybe you just got dumped, you had a big breakup, whatever it might be. Your competence is what should power you through. Your competence is what should give you the self-esteem in order to have success. Competence in a certain area, competence in the skill set, all of a sudden increases that self-esteem despite you having a bad day. Just the other day, actually, I had a really bad day, and there was no real reason why. It was a pretty average day. But I had a bad day, and for about half the day, I let it stop me. I let it affect things that I was doing. But what I decided to do is realize that I actually had a list of things that just needed to happen. They needed to occur. I needed to accomplish them. And when I decided and realized that I had the competence to actually achieve those tasks, the items on that list, then suddenly I dug deep and realized that I did have the self-esteem in order to accomplish it. And then once I actually accomplished the items on that list, I actually crushed those things, suddenly my self-esteem also kept increasing. So what you want to really focus on is this: create this hardening effect to your self-esteem. You don't want to be the egg that you just cracks and all of a sudden you crumble, that all of a sudden you just leak everywhere. Your confidence, your self-esteem, really what you're driving for is a very slow and steady increase in that self-esteem. Because when it's slow and steady, no one can take that away from you. Just like the other parts of game, specifically social circle game, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take those introductions away from you. Nobody can take this skill set away from you. Just like this, nobody can take the self-esteem away from you. When you have that rock solid self-esteem, every time you go up to check in at a hotel, the person who's checking you into that hotel will recognize that you have such solid self-esteem that you don't have to try to have entitlement. You don't have to try to have an abundant mentality. When you have that much self-esteem, they just recognize that. They just bestow those traits upon you. They have that characteristic for you already. You're going to notice that they're going to give you complimentary upgrades, that you're going to get comp bottles at nightclubs, that you're going to get complimentary dinners, that you're going to have people throwing girls at you purely because of your self-esteem alone. Each part of the social circle blueprint works if you don't take any other part and take action on it. If you just take the self-esteem section, you're going to notice that you're going to have people in your life just creating the you army without you actually creating the you army. You're going to notice that people are just throwing value at you because your self-esteem is in fact that high, that solid, that unbreakable. When you have that high self-esteem, something as simple as checking into a hotel, you're going to notice that you're going to get complimentary upgrades without you even questioning it, without you even asking. You're going to notice that girls that you're introduced to will suddenly just give you a little bit more indicators of interest. They're suddenly going to be more into you because you have that high self-esteem. A common theme that you're going to notice as you go through the social circle blueprint is that Every single lesson, task that I show you is something that I specifically have done in my 8 years of teaching game. Everyone is on a quest for state building. Everyone's on a quest to feel good, to be happy, to be content. What you want to do is you want to stay away from these vague, verbose words and instead keep your feet on the ground, focus on the brass tacks of what's actually going to get you results. When you focus on specific, tangible lessons that actually get you results, that are measurable, this isn't to say you're going to get results 100% of the time, but when you focus on increasing your self-esteem in a pragmatic way, in a very objective kind of way, then what you do is you end up making something as ubiquitous as emotions, and you make them containable. You categorize them in such a way where you can actually improve them. Too often, people like to use subjective terms for emotions because it's easier. It's a lot easier to just say that you're feeling good or bad. It's a lot easier to say that you're feeling better or worse, or that you're in a good state or bad state. Really what it is, it's a sign of a deep down, more rooted issue or cause. It's not really just a fleeting emotion. If you're somebody who is even willing to say that you're in bad state, what ends up happening is you realize that deep down you just don't have the self-esteem core that other people have, or that you see some guys having, or that you could have. The way that I learned proper self-esteem and confidence building is through a massive amount of quantity. You're going to notice that you can in fact get quality through quantity, because the quantity gives you such strong reference experience, such strong anecdotal experience, and even more than that, the quantity itself will just instill in you positive traits, lessons, and actual tangible things for you to do. When you instill those actionable, tangible things for you to do, to take action on, you build that skill set, you build your toolkit up, you have that emotional toolbox with you, suddenly your self-esteem goes up and up and up, despite different things happen to you, despite a door guy not letting you into a nightclub, despite a girl rejecting you. Your self-esteem is so high that it can take any of those hits. Self-esteem is not something that came natural to me. Self-esteem and confidence were two of my biggest and strongest weak points when I first learned about personal development, lifestyle redesign, game. I had one area that I was confident in before game, and that one area, in all honesty, I really wasn't as confident as I thought I was. I was just a lot younger than my peers, so my age combined with me knowing a decent amount about that subject gave me a bit of an inflated sense of confidence that kind of could be punctured, almost the way a balloon could be punctured with a needle. You might have parts of your life where you feel like you're confident, but perhaps people in your life think you're maybe more confident about that than you even know that you're confident about that subject, topic, skill set. An example of that is career. Before game, I was extremely confident in my career, but I didn't exactly have high self-esteem for my career because I always kind of knew that I took a different process in learning the skill set that I knew. It was a process that, even though I got a strong result, I really kind of relied on the fact that I was younger than everybody else in order to create my self-esteem. So it was really this strong ego protection. My very first boot camp I ever took, I remember I was shocked at how bad I actually was. Now, I was a virgin at the time, but because I had a few strong points in other parts of my life, you might even have a very similar situation where you're actually talented at a certain skill that you have, or you have a certain aptness at your work, or competence in another area of your life, or you know a lot of facts about something. But then all of a sudden you try to go meet women, you're going to notice that a lot of those confidence points and self-esteem points are sucked out of you, really without warning. That's really what happened to me. I took my very first boot camp, and I just had this massive approach anxiety. And it's not like I hadn't talked to people before. It's not like I didn't have a decent sense of self-worth and self-esteem. But what I did realize, I was actually hiding. I was actually burying a lot of my biggest fears and frustrations. I was burying them for a very long time, which then gave me this sense of confidence. What you're going to realize through Social Circle Blueprint is that It's a sense of confidence, or it's a core, grounded sense of self-esteem. You can't have both. You have to really let go. You have to cut that umbilical cord of this ego-protective sense of confidence and really strive for that core level confidence, core level self-esteem. So on that first boot camp I took, I remember I was just floored. I was shocked at how terrible my opening was. I couldn't come up with anything to say right off the bat to any girl, any guy, let alone a female. And then I remember this one key moment is on the Sunday of that program, I got my first number close. I got a first contact details of a girl my entire life. And I realized that it wasn't the best phone number close. She wasn't my exact ideal girl. But what I realized is that I had control over what happened. And all of a sudden, guess what happened to my self-esteem? My self-esteem skyrocketed. It skyrocketed because I now realize that even if I'm not at the level of game or persuasion or lifestyle design that I want to be at, the fact that I was able to get her phone number and I wasn't able to several days earlier, before I took my boot camp, that told me that I'm on the right path. It told me that I made the right decision to buy that boot camp. I made the right decision to go down this rabbit hole. And I knew that if I kept going down that rabbit hole, new accolades of self-esteem, new personal, interpersonal accolades would happen. And what ends up happening is you get this significant uplift of confidence because you're now in control. You now have the control to create options in your life, which really is what game is all about. It's really what being a pickup artist is all about. It's really what most lifestyle redesign aspects are about. It's creating more options in your life so that you can pick and choose, so that life doesn't happen to you. You are in control of your own life. Everything you do to increase your self-esteem, it doesn't have to have these roller coaster highs and lows. It doesn't have to be these defibrillator shots of self-esteem. That's where state goes wrong. When you're trying to improve your state, you really focus on these short bursts of confidence, these short bursts of self-esteem. When in reality, when you just increase that self-esteem slowly but surely each day, each night that you go out, then what ends up happening is you don't have to have these large bursts. You just can roll with the punches of any sort of negativity that comes your way. Doesn't mean the negativity doesn't happen. It just means that you're able to address the negativity. You're able to address any sort of critical, objective, negative thing that comes into your life, either from another person or self-inflicted, and then you're able to actually convert that into positivity throughout your day. And that's where having that strong self-esteem base comes from. That's what you can get out of that. A lot of guys think that they can get self-esteem through purely outer game, specific situations that occur to them. There's definitely some truth to that. Every positive situation that happens to you, you'd be lying to yourself if you said that that wasn't increasing your self-esteem or your confidence. But you do have to be careful, because every time that you increase your self-esteem based on something that's outside your control, outside your factor, then it's less concrete. The self-esteem isn't quite as solid. One way that I'm going to show you to increase your self-esteem is to be outcome dependent, to look at the other side of the coin, to have tangible, objective goals, metrics, not to the point where you are obsessive compulsive about it, but to the point where you actually know each week, are you getting better with your game or are you getting worse with your game? Each week, are you lying to yourself? Are you potentially getting results despite your game or because of your game? When you actually look in the mirror and take a really honest look at how much you're progressing, suddenly it gets very frustrating, it gets very disappointing at first. You might go 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, but you'll still be going 2 steps forward. It's really one of the best ways to increase your self-esteem because you're actually taking an honest look at yourself rather than sugarcoating things. A lot of guys choose to sugarcoat their results. They sugarcoat their progress. If you want to actually get results, you want to get those 9s and 10s that I'll talk about in the other module. You want to get the type of girl that you're after. If you really want to get the type of girl that messed you up, that got you into game and personal development in the first place, you want to get your ex back, or maybe you want to have your ex regret ever leaving you in the first place, then you're going to realize that these tangible skill sets, The stuff that I'm going to show you, the toolbox that I'm going to construct just for you, is exactly what's necessary to build up your self-esteem. I'm going to show you how to build up your self-esteem even if you're overweight, you have bad style, maybe you have a bad beard, or you have a skin issue, or you have some sort of other physical ailment, deformity, problem that is one of your biggest insecurities or weaknesses. I'm going to go through an entire inner comfort checklist that you can do just for yourself. You don't have to share it with anybody. That will literally show you exactly what you're most insecure about, whether you know it or not. And it will show you how to actually turn that into a strong point. It will show you how to turn your strongest insecurities into your strongest points of confidence. The way most guys go through their life is they take their insecurities and they cover them up somehow. They cover them up with the way that they act, the way they dress, the different career choices that they make. They cover up all their insecurities. When instead, if you look your insecurities right in the mirror and you welcome your insecurities, you acknowledge them, what ends up happening is you're able to actually get past them in a productive way where you increase your self-esteem, you increase that confidence without those insecurities having to creep in. It's exceptionally easy to have high self-esteem when you're making the kind of income that you expect to be making, when you're in the physical physique that you expect to have, when your style's on point, when you have a strong social circle already, when you have girls that are already clamoring to have your attention. It's very easy to have high self-esteem. But can you have high self-esteem when all of that gets taken away from you? Can you have high self-esteem when you are perhaps a bit out of shape, maybe a lot more than a bit out of shape? When you're on unemployment and you're in between jobs, when your friends for some reason decided to call you less, when all these other outside factors happen, can you still have an immense high self-esteem? That's when you have an unshakable, completely unbreakable self-esteem. There's going to be lots of different ways, both inward and outward, that I'm going to show you in order to increase your baseline level of self-esteem. Take both. Realize there's a balance. You might find yourself enjoying the inner self-esteem exercises and techniques a lot more than the outer game techniques and exercises. Or vice versa. Maybe you enjoy the actual examples, the tangible examples of building up your self-esteem. Either way, realize it's a balance. It's a back and forth. When you do both, when you realize that sometimes doing the thing that you don't want to do the most, that's actually what's going to help you the most, achieve the most results, then you end up getting motivated to take that action. Every time that you meet up with another Social Circle Blueprint member, every time that you go through the other modules of the Social Circle Blueprint, keep in mind what is the action that you could take to increase your self-esteem. Because it rubs off on everybody. The more self-esteem that you have, the higher status your self-esteem, the easier all the other techniques are going to be. Throughout the rest of the Social Circle Blueprint, always realize and understand how can that concept that I'm demonstrating for you, that I'm showing you, how can that increase your self-esteem? Because the more self-esteem that you have, the higher status your self-esteem is, the more of a badass that you actually are, and that you recognize that you are, the easier everything else will be. When you're in a group of people and you have high self-esteem, your joke doesn't need to be quite as funny. Your energy doesn't have to be quite as high because the self-esteem gets carried over to them. They'll recognize that you're somebody of self-worth and of value that they'll want in their life. They'll realize that you're somebody that they can actually soak up some value arbitrage from, that you actually could be a potential connector, rather than somebody who sulks and sinks in their own self-pity. Nobody wants to be around that. It's not about faking it till you make it, but it is about setting yourself up to succeed. You have to stack the deck in your favor. The house always wins. So what you have to do is realize that self-esteem is a challenging thing. You can't just out-emotion your way into high self-esteem. You have to create these logical categories. You have to create these patterns, these habits in your life that prove to you over and over again that you are the fucking man, that you are a badass, that you do deserve all of the results and the rewards and the women and the life experiences that you always knew that you deserved. But you have to take action. You have to take massive action. You have to do everything that I'm going to lay out for you in order to have that high self-esteem. or it's just not going to happen for you. The crazy thing is this. I believe in every single one of my clients, every single person that I've taught these social circle blueprint concepts to in person, I've believed in every single one of them more than they've ever actually believed in themselves. And that's because I can take somebody and see where they could go a lot easier than they can actually see themselves. Even you, I can see exactly how far you can take these concepts, exactly how many quality friends you could put in your life, exactly what type of real solid 8, 9, 10 that you could be dating, sleeping with, exactly what type of entrepreneurial effort that you could succeed with. I can see that because I can see the potential that's inside of you as long as you actually had the self-esteem to back it up. If you had the self-esteem to back up your work ethic, to match up to your ambition, the sky's the limit. You would be going to places. It would be impossible for you to not be going to high status award shows, high status nightclubs, high status restaurants, whatever the thing is that is of high value and high status to you. It would almost be more work for you to not do those things. Once you complete the social circle blueprint, you're going to realize that it's actually more work to not get your 9 or 10. It's actually more work to not hang out with the cool guys that you've always wanted to hang out with. It's more work to not feel good about yourself all the time. And then once you stack the deck in your favor by making it more work to not do those things, suddenly your life just becomes this continual flow of amazing experiences, beautiful women, and everything else that you ever knew you deserved. Once you understand how important your own confidence, your own self-esteem is, and how critical your level of self-esteem is to your success with women, with your career, any entrepreneurial efforts, your networking, epic experiences that you have, once you realize how significant of an impact that your self-esteem has on your life, it's very clear that that's the route you should take. You should really put a concerted effort into developing that self-esteem and really treating it like a muscle, not like an accidental afterthought. When you treat your self-esteem and your confidence building like a muscle, you work it every day. It's a prescription that you take each day. It's not something that accidentally happens or something that's inadvertent. It's obvious that having strong self-esteem, a high level of self-confidence, is going to help you achieve all the results that you're after. It's going to help you seduce the girl that you're trying to hook up with. It's going to help you get that ex back. It's going to help you get a promotion at work. In fact, you're going to realize how powerful self-esteem is and having that core confidence when you notice that these accolades and these cool things just happen to you randomly and you didn't really do anything differently. You just have this new, confident, high self-esteem, high status aura around you. And other people, not only do they sense it, but it causes a lot of pressure inside of them to then do things for you, to then be a part of your life. The easiest way to increase your confidence and your self-esteem is to look at the other side of the coin of outcome dependence. Traditionally, we don't want to have outcome dependence because it will put us in our head, it will bog us down, it will slow our progress down. It will create a situation, an environment where you're not going to have as much success. However, the other side to that coin is knowing what you're after, being very specific, authentic to what you're trying to achieve, and knowing that you have the ability, that you have the skill set, you have the tools to create consistent results for yourself. Once you're able to create consistent results for yourself, you'll notice that your self-esteem and your confidence skyrockets. It will almost be immeasurable. Your confidence will go through the roof at levels that you never could have imagined purely because of this one word, and that one word is consistency. There's a lot of guys out there that hook up with a lot of really attractive girls, but most of those guys, a lot of them just aren't consistent. They're still kind of pissing in the wind or grasping for straws. The real way to increase your self-esteem and your self-worth and your confidence is to have consistent results over time, having a pattern. Because what this does, it reinforces in your mind that you are deserving of the results that you're getting. If your results come sporadic, they come off the cuff, they're random, you don't feel as deserving of those results. You don't necessarily deserve a 9 or 10 right now, because if you did deserve her, you would have her in your life. But that doesn't mean that you don't deserve her one day. But you got to actually put those things in place. Something has to tick. You either need to be using your game, you need to be using, some guys use looks, some guys they try to use money to get girls. If you're gonna use your personality, you need to put an aggressive approach, a tenacious approach into increasing your self-esteem, and not just relying on the fact that you're kind of okay. There's 5 levels of content. When you're at the lowest level of content, you're the most likely person to actually achieve success because you're coming from such a low place. Whereas if you're coming from a place of high content, you're coming from a place of abundance already, you're not as likely to improve. You're not as likely to make strides in your progress because you don't need to. You're already content. It's that middle ground that you kind of have to be especially careful of, where you're getting decent results with girls, but it's not consistent. Because what that's going to do is it's going to cloud your mind. It's going to tell you that, hey, you know what, you're actually good, when in fact you might not be. It's going to tell you that you're funny in situations when you aren't, just because you're at that 3 or 4 level of content. That 3 or 4 level of content is the type of guy who probably got his college degree, maybe was in a frat, maybe was in another student organization, got a job in some decent metropolitan area, has a few social circles, and every once in a while randomly goes home with some girl. That's the type of guy who's a lot less likely to try to learn game, try to better himself this exact way that you're bettering yourself. That guy's a lot less likely to increase his status and increase his success with women because he isn't coming from as painful of a place. If you're coming from a place of just as much pain as I'm coming from, you're going to skyrocket your results. They'll be extremely measurable, and they'll be kind of spooky how aggressive your confidence becomes, to the point where you'll actually go through the arrogance phase. You'll have so much confidence that you're just completely going around any negativity from that overinflated confidence, because the confidence you're getting will match up with the results that you're getting. So it won't be for nothing. You'll actually have real, tangible self-esteem that's based on anecdotes. It's based on numbers. It's based on something you've actually gone through. The worst that you can have is confidence based on pure affirmation alone. I'm going to discuss with you a lot of ways that you can gain confidence and self-esteem with positive affirmations by doing a lot of inner work. But the way that you can gain consistent confidence is by having consistent results. You have those consistent results by doing some of the core fundamentals of the Social Circle Blueprint. I accidentally found my self-confidence. I accidentally found my self-esteem. I never really looked at myself as a guy who had high self-esteem or high level of confidence until tens or maybe even hundreds of guys kept coming up to me and asking me about it. And the reason why I didn't really notice it or think about it at first is when I realized and I decided that game, that persuasion, that human psychology is something I wanted to focus my efforts on, lifestyle redesign, then I realized the fact that I don't really want to have time to think about emotions that could be negative for me or that could slow my progress down. So instead, I filled up my entire time gaming, studying, focusing on leveling up. And then eventually, I learned confidence and self-esteem along the way. My technical ability was always further than my inner game was. My inner game was always kind of catching up to my outer game results. And that actually catapulted my confidence. Despite what a lot of people would say, it catapulted my confidence because I was always seeing what type of lifestyle that a guy with high confidence was living, because I was living that lifestyle despite me being a few stages back in the confidence area. So all that I had to do was keep going, keep aggressively approaching, changing up my goals, achieving new goals, dating more attractive women, higher status women, women that were open to being bisexual, women that were open to having other women in the relationship, open to meeting women that had a very aggressive career ambitions, just aggressively tackling my dating life. Then there was also the guy aspect. So much of this comes down to not only just being the guy that every girl wants, but being the guy that every guy wants to be. It's kind of ironic. One of the pivotal moments that motivated me and got me excited about lifestyle redesign, learning how to seduce women, is this article that I read when I was really young in Maxim magazine about how to be that type of guy. The article was literally something like that guy. And in the article, it kept reiterating the point of being the guy that all girls want to be with, but also it's important to be the guy that all other guys want to be. And that's super critical to me because at a certain point, you have all the girls that you can have. About 9 months into the game, I reached a level of success that was higher than what my original goal was when I took my very first boot camp in the first place. So when you look at the rabbit hole that is personal development, psychology, learning all these different techniques, the women aspect is actually a small percentage of the overall picture. When you meet other like-minded guys, or perhaps even guys that could be mentors of yours, guys that are in a more advanced career path, guys that are dating the exact type of girl that you're after, guys that are doing exact things with their lifestyle that you want to be doing, that will catapult your success with women even further than just focusing on those women specifically.